Hey, welcome back. Welcome back to Nurse Love 101. I'm Katherine and I'm spilling the tea on nursing. So this is one of the questions that I hear so much. It's basically, I'm a new grad, I just got out of school, passed my NCLEX, and now I don't know where I want to be. This can be very challenging, and this is even challenging for nurses with experience. This is something of, you're going to have to just jump into a department and kind of see what works best for you. I'm going to tell you my story of how I was a new grad and how I got my first job and how I basically ended up specializing in the emergency room for about 7 years. So, long story short, I was a new grad back in 2011. It was rough out there. It was rough. It was really hard to find a nursing job. When I graduated, it was basically a challenge. I went to a school in San Francisco and I was one of the nursing students who did not receive a preceptorship. And I was like really bummed because I thought that the preceptorship was going to be my way into finding what department I wanted to be in, what specialty of nursing I wanted to be in. And in all honesty, I'm kind of glad I didn't receive a preceptorship, because I think if I would have received a preceptorship, I might have already been stuck in a mode that made me think this is where I should be. During the time that I was in nursing school, I honestly thought I wanted to be a psych nurse. I just thought that being a psych nurse was more kind of up my alley. I loved everything about learning about psychological disorders, mental health. I really thought it was somewhere that I wanted to be for the long run. Then come graduating, I was like, okay, I need to get a job. Passed my NCLEX at 75, and that's another story that I want to talk to you guys about. Passed my NCLEX, and it was time to get a job. So I was filling out applications, I was trying to get in new grad residencies programs, and it was basically a no go for about a month. And I ended up getting a job at a nursing facility, at a skilled nursing facility. And I'll be honest, I knew geriatrics wasn't necessarily where I wanted to be at. And I knew a nursing facility wasn't where I wanted to be at either. But it was a job. They were the first ones to give me experience. And I gained a lot of experience in the nursing facility. I gained a lot of experience. I was starting IVs. I was helping patients with ambulation. I was passing meds. I was checking blood glucose. And sometimes in the nursing facilities, we had moments where patients wouldn't make it. So I was learning, I really was learning. And there was also times where patients would become sick. Maybe they became septic or urosepsis or kidney dysfunction. There was patients there who received dialysis, peritoneal dialysis. So in some ways I was learning the profession of nursing. So I kept trying to get into the hospital or in a psychiatric facility or department. I kept applying and still no go. So bummed. I was so bummed, and I was probably at the nursing facility for about 5 months. I was very lucky to be one of the first students from my class to get a job. I got a job at a month after I passed the NCLEX. And I'm going to tell you, I hit the ground running. The reason why I got the job at the nursing facility is because I was persistent. I kept going in there, you know, checking, calling, and one day they just gave me an opportunity and was like, yeah, we're so short-staffed, we could train you. And the hospitals were just not giving me any type of chances. They were giving me no action whatsoever. So I was like super bummed. So one day I get this letter saying that you have applied to a new grad program or new grad position in the PACU and we want to interview you. So I'm like, yay! Then I find out that they had multiple applicants. And then I find out that they were only choosing 2 people for this position. So I was like, oh, the pressure is on. And it was for a county job. It was at a county hospital and it was like a panel interview, right? I get in the interview and I feel like I'm doing the best that I can. You know, I felt like since I had some experience in the nursing facility, it was better than no experience at all. So finally, I get this opportunity. I'm like, yes, this is like my first interview for a hospital. And I'm like, yes, I have to get this job. And I'm telling you, I was like manifesting, saying affirmations every day. I was like picturing myself working there, you know, pushing the OR curtains. I was doing the most. I was like, I have to get this job. I am in this job. This job is me. Like I've always been a manifester. So I was so on that positive affirmation aspect. Probably about a week later, I get a phone call and it's one of the ladies in the interview. And she's like, we just want to tell you that you interviewed so well, but unfortunately, we're not going to give you the position because we want somebody with a little bit more experience. And I'm like, this is a new grad program. What are they talking about? But there were still new grads who were working on med-surg, who were working in different departments. So new grads were coming from out of state. I mean, it was just that area where I was like, oh, okay. She goes, but we want to give you an opportunity to possibly, you know, work somewhere in the hospital. And I'm like, okay. And she's like, what department do you want to go in? And I was like, thinking to myself, oh shit, I've never even really thought about that. And at the time I said med-surg, because in nursing school, I felt like they always said, everybody has to do med-surg first. And I was like, med-surg. I think that would be the best place for me because that seems like the foundation of nursing. And she was like, no, where do you want to be? And at this time, I'll be honest, I didn't know. I thought med-surg tele, but I really didn't know, right? So I was like, I don't know. And she was like, how about I give you an opportunity to choose where you would like to be so you could see nursing? And she was like, we have an opening in the float pool. And I was like, float pool? And at first I was just like, yes, you know, I'll work days, I'll work nights. I need a job in the hospital. I need to get experience. Yes, yes, yes. You could put me wherever. I don't care. But I was very nervous. I was very skeptical. And she was like, these are the departments we will train you for. And they gave me about 8 weeks training in each department, maybe a little bit more if I needed help. But I'll be honest, the training was fast. And she was like, you are going to work NICU, postpartum, peds, ICU, tele, med-surg, and the emergency room. And I was like, whoa, whoa. And at the time, as a new grad, the way they did it was they wanted you to start in the specialty pediatric programs first. When I started working the float pool. So I started with a NICU, which of course in NICU, it was I believe they were like a level 3 NICU, or they were definitely had babies that were intubated, babies on O2. But since I was a float pool nurse, they basically made sure I didn't have any of the really unstable patients. I sometimes might have a baby who was on O2, might have a baby that would desat or Brady down, but the babies were more stable and resilient. I did have babies on TPN or doing tube feedings, but most of them were the grower and feeders, and they were there just to kind of get plumped up. And I spent a lot of time in NICU. I enjoyed it, but I knew it was not the position for me. And there was some reasons why. The family dynamics. Also, I kind of was a very loud person. I'm still consider myself kind of like a loud person. And the babies there don't need to be overstimulated. It's more like a quieter department. And here I come, kind of like the nurse who's like bumping into stuff. Like, it just wasn't for me. But I would float there, and I did enjoy my time. Then I floated to postpartum. Postpartum, I automatically knew I didn't like it. I don't know. I just knew I didn't like it. It wasn't for me. Postpartum is an amazing place. If you're in that area of specialty and you really, I feel like postpartum, you have to have a lot of patience, because you're teaching women how to breastfeed. You're also helping with the babies. You're sometimes could have like twins. Like it just wasn't for me. But I did enjoy it. Not that much, but whatever. But I at least got that experience. And there were some things like stillbirths, some CPS cases, or just there were some things that I just didn't really enjoy about postpartum. But it is a good place to go if that's where you want to go. Then I went to peds. Peds, I enjoyed peds. I did enjoy peds. I thought peds was cool. But I'll be honest, the dynamics with the family was something too that, and then if we had sick kids, I would always feel sad. It just wasn't really for me. But I would float there, and I enjoyed working there. For the most part, I did enjoy peds, but I didn't want to necessarily be a peds nurse. Then I got to float to med-surg and tele. Med-surg and tele, especially at a county hospital, is extremely busy. And it was a trauma facility, so it was a busy department. There was a lot of admits. I felt like I learned a lot when I was there. I definitely liked it. I liked it a lot. But I didn't like certain aspects about it. I just felt like we were always short-staffed. I felt like there were some areas about it that I just, I would work there probably for a while, and I was happy, but it wasn't really the department for me. Then I got floated to ICU, and I would say ICU was definitely, and this is the rotation that they trained me and floated me in, because they knew once I started floating in like med-surg tele, I would rarely get floated in peds or NICU, just because those departments always needed help. So I was super like excited. I was like stoked to be stoked. Does anybody say stoked? I was like pumped to be in the ICU. I was like critical care and this ICU, just having your 2 patients, sometimes 1. And most of the time, once I got trained in ICU, I was in ICU a lot. And our ICU was very much a high functioning ICU. They sometimes even did organ transplant with patients who something happened with them. So we would learn about that. They also had a lot of patients from trauma because it was a trauma facility. A lot of sepsis, a lot of septic patients. We didn't have a neurovascular surgeon, so we weren't necessarily a level 2 trauma facility. We were a level 3. So, but we still sometimes had patients who would have like head bleed. So I was really like, wow, do I want to take this opportunity in ICU, or do I want to hold out and stay in the float pool and see what the ER is all about? I feel like most people, most smart people would say, no, I want to take this ICU experience. I want to take this area to be an ICU. I want to take this chance. But me, I knew that there was a part of me that at least wanted to check out the ER. So that's what I did. I started my orientation in the emergency room, and I will tell you from day 1, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And I was a new nurse. Maybe by then I had about 9 months experience at the county. And I absolutely loved it. And it was just such an adrenaline rush, having traumas come in, taking care of patients. Also, things that I really enjoyed about working in the emergency room was the team approach, the times that you actually got to see your work was resuscitating somebody. You really saw you were saving lives. I mean, that's honestly how I felt. It was just the place for me for a very long time. There's still times that I truly miss working in the emergency room, and I wish I could go back. But I know for me, on different reasons, after I've done like 8 years in the emergency room, it's just not the place for me anymore. Also, I have to value my mental clarity and my mental space. You know, I'm not as centered in that area of chaos and working through traumatic situations as I once was as a new grad. I don't really necessarily seek that adrenaline that I used to when I was new. And there are areas that I don't miss about working in the emergency room. Like knowing that somebody's family member was lost. And also living in a very anxious place, I think, in the emergency room, because you would see the worst of the worst, and you would sometimes think the worst of the worst. So there are areas like that I don't miss. But when I was a new grad and I was finding departments to go in, I automatically knew the emergency room was the one for me. And I worked there for a very long time, and then I even got a per diem job with like a same-day surgery department, just so I can enhance my skills and learn different departments. And I think that's really the moral of this story, is you don't need to know exactly where you want to be for the rest of your life, right? Nursing is very flexible, and nursing changes, and you change as a person. So you might feel extremely centered in med-surg tele, and that's where you want to be, right? Like, and you will learn a lot from that. But you can also have the ability to get like a per diem job in like a surgery department or an outpatient clinic, or maybe an urgent care, or maybe an emergency room or ICU. If there is somewhere that is calling to you, definitely I would say try to place yourself in that department, but don't get so stuck on knowing exactly where it is that you're supposed to be for your whole nursing career, because you as a nurse have the ability to change that. And that's kind of what I've done, right? You know, I started off in the float pool. I thought I was going to end up probably ICU. Then I ended up in the emergency room, and I loved it. And then once I outgrew the emergency room and outgrew that space of my life, I knew it was time for me to place myself somewhere else. So just take it as a learning experience wherever they place you, and there's no reason why you shouldn't look for other opportunities, especially if you have a strong calling. I've never worked in the operating room. I've never worked in labor and delivery. I've never worked in like the cardiac cath rooms or cardiology, but would I be interested in those places? Sure, why not? But I never was given the opportunity, or I never really applied. I never worked in a psych facility, which actually was what I thought I would be in as a nursing student. I wanted to be a psych nurse, and I never was given that opportunity. And then I just didn't feel that need anymore. So as a new nurse, as a new grad, don't focus so much on where it is that you should be at. Focus on getting experience, and then you can always move around from department to department. And that is one of the beautiful things about nursing. So I just wanted to spill that tea. Also, I will say with different departments, there comes different liability. For all departments, there's liability, right? But when you are working in places like labor and delivery, peds, postpartum, it's so much liability that you really should take out some extra insurance. I think all nurses should, but especially if you are working in those high liability areas. And I do want to say that as a nurse, I'm very blessed that I was given the opportunity as a new grad to find where I wanted to be centered. Most people don't get that opportunity. I do think float nursing is an extremely hard department to work for. The float pool was very challenging because I would sometimes have what I perceived as very hard assignments. And I think that's because I wasn't really one of theirs. So I sometimes felt like I was being dumped on. But for the most part, I made it through, and it gave me the opportunity to find the department I loved for many years. So if there is a float pool in your hospital, I do recommend being able to see if they do let you float to specialties, because if you're only floating to like med-surg tele, that might not necessarily be ideal, but if you are able to float to a specialty, like let's say ICU, the emergency room, postpartum, or peds, I would actually take up that chance. It lets you meet the managers, it lets you meet the other people in the department, and it lets you learn about that specialty. So I just wanted to spill that little extra tea with you guys, and thank you so much for checking out Nurse Love 101. Please subscribe and share with all your nursing friends. Also, I would love to hear, what department are you set in the